Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Locked On Seminoles. As you know, today is Friday and it's of a game week, so you know we have another Know Your Foe series with the one and only Mr. AJ Black from Locked On Boston College. Today we'll discuss their expectations coming into the year, the transition from Steve Addazio to Jeff Hafley, how they feel with Phil Jurkovec coming back after spelling Dan Grossell once the Cinderella carriage came to a pumpkin, and how they feel about this game this upcoming Saturday. So, folks, let's dive on in and join with myself and Mr. AJ Black from Locked On BC.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Seminoles. As I said earlier, it's your boy Drake. I'm riding solo today. I'm joined by Mr. AJ Black from Locked On Boston College. AJ, how's it going, my guy?
Hey, it's going great. It's a Thursday evening here up in New England. It's cold, and it's starting to feel like winter around here.
Have you always been in the BC area, like the New England area?
Yeah, I've lived up in Massachusetts my entire life, and I live probably about a half hour west of them right now.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. So before we dive on in to get to know the team, I kind of want to let the folks know a little about AJ the person. Could you give them a little bit of your background before we dive on into the X's and O's?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got my master's at Boston College in 2006. And I've worked for BC. I grew up a BC basketball and football fan. I met my wife, who is also a BC grad. We got married at BC. So you can see the theme. I worked for BC for a while. And then, we had our son's pictures done at BC. It's a big thing for us. And so I did that for a long time. Just, I did the whole SB Nation, like being a fan type of thing. Now I work for, I have my own site, BC Bulletin, part of at Sports Illustrated and the Fan Nation Network, where I cover Boston College all the time.
Damn, man, we got the perfect guy for the BC stuff right now. Even though I will also say you did leave out that AJ is on Locked On ACC on Wednesdays with Candace Cooper on Locked On Network as well. He does the power rankings, even though I do have a little bit of umbrage with your rankings sometimes, my guy. But we can discuss that off air.
Hey, I hope I'm on the right bandwagon here because I have defended Mike Norvell all year long.
I will say you are probably one of the few people, including our own show, that have defended the man since day one. If we're being honest here.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh man, but let's get to know a little more about BC because that's what the folks are actually here for. And one of the big things that I actually wasn't a college football fan up until I actually got to Florida State 2011. And one of the big things I saw that you guys always had, I knew that Ryan was there, but when I was in college, you guys were a little more known for your running backs, like an Andre Williams, and then AJ Dillon for a few years ago. And I kind of look towards that. And then what actually is the identity of kind of BC football? Because it's not, you guys aren't perennially a top tier football school, but so like, what exactly are your expectations coming into year in and year out?
So, right now, when I projected on Locked On BC earlier this year, what I expected BC to be with Phil Jurkovec at quarterback and a returning offensive line, I had them at 9 wins. That's including a bowl game. So I think that right now is where we're hoping the program goes, is to like a 9-win team, because they did do that for a while under Tom O'Brien back in the 2000s. But BC for about so it's 12, 13 years under Frank Spaziani and Steve Addazio had some really lean years. Addazio was fine, but he really lowered the bar in terms of what our expectations were because BC just became the 6 and 7 win team. They just could not get past that hump. So the AD Martin Jarman, who's now at UCLA, he decided after the 2019 season that Addazio's done. We got to figure out something else because it's just, we're just kind of spinning our gears here. He goes and hires Jeff Hafley. They bring in this offensive system, right? So you're right. They go away from the power running. But what they're doing, they brought in Phil Jurkovec, a blue chipper from Notre Dame. He wasn't playing there because Ian Book kind of had that spot taken. Last year he looked good. He looked like a promising quarterback. And, he comes out at the beginning of the season, looks dynamic, but it's against Colgate. And, he scores a bunch of touchdowns. Second game of the season, he gets in this fluky injury where he breaks his wrist, and it looks like his season's gone. And it was, BC fans were, it was devastating because, all the expectations of the season just kind of went down the toilet because here's your, potential NFL quarterback. I mean, I've heard, he's 6'5", 250 that people were comparing him to Ben Roethlisberger out there, and he's gone. And so all of a sudden BC starts playing like crap. They lose like I think it was 4 straight ACC games. The offense just cannot get out of its own way. Jurkovec comes back out of the blue.
Like a knight in shining armor.
it was the craziest story because I was covering it and I started getting buzzed. And like BC was like, they had closed practices. They were like not saying anything. And then all of a sudden some people were like, hey, my roommate's like friends with someone on the football team. They say Jurkovec's coming back this weekend. And everyone had said he would be gone for the year. Like it was doubtful he was going to be returned. Hafley said he wouldn't return. Jurkovec thought he wouldn't be back. Virginia Tech game happens and he comes out and people go nuts. The offense hasn't gotten there. He didn't practice all week. It wasn't just there yet. But last week you saw what Boston College could do when they played Georgia Tech, and he had 5 total touchdowns. 3 of them aren't rushing, which I was stunned. He looks like he lost weight and he can throw the ball. So it's the offense flows through him. When he wasn't there, they just couldn't figure it out. They couldn't get things going. He is the offense, and he can do a million different things to hurt you.
And then that kind of shows because you guys were super competitive actually once Jurkovec did get hurt. I know Dan Scrisso isn't like someone you really want your backup, but you guys still actually, you guys beat Missouri, and that's like one of the bigger things actually with him under center, as well as right. I know you had that 4-game stretch, but it shows how resilient and how much of like sort of his mentality, his character he brought from Ohio State as the DC over there to now being the head coach of BC. So kind of want to ask you, what was the transition from a Steve Addazio, the football guy of guys being dudes? Like I remember that famous video. I think that's a great video, folks. You just check that out, guys being dudes, Steve Addazio, to a Jeff Hafley who you can tell that even from last year to the way he was handling all the, we're not going to a bowl game, we qualify, but we want to be back with our fans. Like how can you discuss that transition like culturally?
Oh, so it's totally different. Now, if you want me to go from what what Addazio I know of, like he hated me. I was referred to as a bunch of names that I don't want to say on an air that's supposed to be PG. So he was a bully, and he played football like that old, gym teacher style, like, smash him in the mouth, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. But beneath all of that bravado was a guy that just couldn't perform. Like he couldn't do it. And to bring that out, you see, his situational football was terrible. Whenever games, I think back to I think it was 2017 against Florida State, where they had that pass at the very end of the game. That's and BC had the ball to beat them right before that, and he punted from like the Florida State 38-yard line. That was his mentality. He didn't have a winning mentality. He just kind of kept doing that. You bring in Hafley, a guy who is not, he's a career coordinator. He's a younger guy. And you don't know, but when you hear him talk, you heard him talk before he even coached the game, and you knew it was going to be something different. The connection that he has with the players is genuine. He loves his players. They all say it, like they're like, we love each other. We're a family. And as you said, with the bowl game, like that was a personal decision that they made as a group that meant a lot. And so for some fans, they were like, what the heck? This is, sissy crap, blah, 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 blah. But Hafley saw that, and that just gets more buy-in, right? He cares about his players. He gets them going. And so that happens. And then on the field, you get the defense is starting to improve in areas. Their pass defense is one of the best in the country right now, which is Hafley's bread and butter. And the passing game, they went from the ground and pound in Addazio to this new, hucking around the field, and they're doing it well. So it's been a big change. And if your fans ever want to listen to me, I have a segment every single Tuesday, where I play parts of Steve Addazio's newest press conferences and compare it to what he used to say at BC, because he's at Colorado State now. His buddy Urban Meyer hired him over there when he definitely didn't deserve that job. And his press conferences are like clones of the things he used to say at BC, and our fans can't get enough of it.
Jeff Hafley probably is one of the rising stars actually of the program. And one of the rising stars actually across the country, well, rising star, there have been a perennial powerhouse since 1965, is McDonald's. Today's episode of Locked On Seminoles is brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving communities since 1965. Your boy, I mean, you can tell from the video, I'm a little thicker. I'm a big double, a McChicken with an Oreo, M&M, McFlurry, between the two I choose. AJ, what's your go-to at McDonald's?
Oh, sausage egg McMuffin. I love those.
Ooh, sausage egg McMuffin. I like the sausage egg McGriddle. I'm one of those guys. But folks, heading over to McDonald's right now, and you know what? We might be having a Locked On Seminoles watch party for the BC Seminoles game this Saturday, and it's always been more than just tasty, affordable food. It is a community center. It's a place where friends and family come together. And a big thank you to our friends at McDonald's for always being there. And as always, ba-da-ba-ba-ba, we're loving it. So now let's go from Jeff Hafley from the coaching, side of things. Let's go actually to your team in general. And we discussed earlier how basically the entire identity of your offense was sort of lost when Phil Jurkovec went down. I kind of want to ask, how were you able to kind of keep your head above water while he was out? And then what also is the identity of this offensive team that we're going to be seeing on Saturday?
So they were able to keep themselves afloat for usually 2 quarters a game, and then the wheels would fall off. Basically the defense was making plays, and they would make turnovers. They would, they would bend and not break so that, the scores would stay relatively close. You saw it against Clemson. You saw it for 2 quarters against Louisville, against NC State and Syracuse. But what would end up happening is the offense just could not get anything sustained going. And the third quarter just turned into, the floodgates would open because the defense was just so gassed that they just couldn't get off the field. And then they would just, against Sean Tucker, he would just, break arm tackles because they were just so tired. It's just a lot. It just got messy. Now Jurkovec comes back. This changes everything about Boston College's team, because now you saw it against Georgia Tech. He runs these, some of these drives that can go 5-6 minutes, keeps the defense fresh. They're not as banged up. They're not as tired when it gets to the third quarter. You don't have those floodgate quarters anymore on defense, and he's scoring points. So even if the defense, who is not perfect, you'll see, when you're playing against Florida State, who, has a mobile quarterback or can, have some speed on the outside, they're going to get some plays going and they could get some points, but BC is able to match them. They did it against Georgia Tech. Jahmyr Gibbs, was faster than anyone on BC's team. And, he made his plays, but BC was able to hit him right back. And that's the brilliance of Jurkovec, because he right now is playing. He against Georgia Tech, at least, played at such a high level that no matter what Georgia Tech was going to do, he's going to score in the next drive.
And is that also kind of helped out? Because I know you guys have a few, players on your offense that we should be watching out for. I know Zay Flowers is the big name that goes across everyone's board when thinking about ACC wideouts. I kind of want to look more towards Hunter Long's understudy. Hunter Long, for those of you that don't know, was the BC tight end last year. Is that correct?
Yep, he's with the Miami Dolphins now.
He's with the Dolphins now. And You guys have Trey Berry on that team. How has he performed this year? And I mainly ask that because our linebacking core, we've seen over the course of the year, has been our weaker point of our defense. So how has Trey Berry performed this season, and how do you see him being utilized on Saturday?
He's vital, and he missed a lot of time too. He got banged up. Oh, not a lot of time. I think he missed 3 or 4 weeks. He got what I thought looked like an ACL tear against Louisville. He limped off the field, no weight on it, but he came back. He's big, he's lengthy. Florida State fans would have seen him last year. He played against you I think it was last year, Jacksonville State. He was their tight end. And I know he did. Yeah, he played against. I don't know if it was last year or the year before. I know because when I was talking about him on Locked On BC, we had mentioned that he had good numbers against ACC programs, because I think he did pretty well in a game. Florida State, I believe, won, but he had some good stuff. So
that might have been him then. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's 6'5". He moves. He's going to be an NFL tight end. He's very much the same style as Hunter Long. I don't think he's as talented, but what he does is he fits really well in that offensive scheme that Cignetti does a really nice job of doing rubs and moves that get these guys open, and he could be wide open on some plays. There was a play last week against Georgia Tech. The Yellow Jackets had BC on their own 3-yard line, and they were just pinned back. It was 3rd down. It was 3rd long. Somehow Jurkovec got a pass off for 30 yards to Trey Berry. So he is super valuable to this offense. And you're right, Zay's the big one, and he has a connection with Jurkovec that he did not have with Grorsell. Grorsell could not hit him. That was the big issue, was, Zay Flowers is so good when you hit him with the long stuff, but Dennis Grosel, couldn't hit the broadside of a barn when he had to throw it past 10 yards. And that was a big issue. So then that whole deep ball to Zay Flowers thing was gone. And now Jurkovec's back and he's got the touch. And he hit him for 2 touchdowns this week. I believe he hit him for a bomb against Virginia Tech. So that will be something to watch, is seeing how the Seminoles handle a speedy wide receiver like Zay Flowers, but also some of the complementary guys like Trey Barry. And the other name to watch for is Jayden Williams, who is a true freshman from Texas, who's really come along. And I think he'll be a valuable target as well.
Okay, that'll be good because actually we do. I don't know if you caught a little bit the Miami game this past weekend, but we kind of had the emergence of actually one of our freshman cornerbacks in Amarian Cooper, who as in the depth chart, I think that was released on Monday or yesterday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So we're recording this now. That he actually will be starting at Boston College. So it's actually going to be interesting to watch. Like not only we'll see how Zay Flowers performs, but also the Jayden Williams kid. And to end off kind of the offense side of the football, I want to talk about the big boys up front, the hog mollies, if you will. Mainly because that's going to be primarily where I think the game's going to be won at, because our defensive line with Jermaine Johnson, Fabian Lovett, and Kier Thomas are basically probably part of the elite of the ACC defensive line. So I kind of want to know, how do you guys utilize your offensive line scheming? Whether it be is the strength of your offense? Is that where it runs through? Like how do you guys go about that?
Yeah, I mean, so it again has to do with the quarterback, because Jurkovec moves the pocket so well that he's able to make the offensive line look really good. They've had their ups and downs, and if you've listened to national media, you listen to the ACC Network. Eric McLean always praises them. Pro Football Focus, I think, put the offensive line number 2 in the nation. You wouldn't see that. I don't see that sometimes. And the run game, sometimes it doesn't move as well as you want them to. And the reason is there are 3 guys on the offensive line that I would say are very good. You mentioned Alec Lindstrom, the center. Chris Lindstrom's his older brother. He's a guard for the Falcons. Excellent. He'll be an NFLer next year. Zion Johnson is probably one of the best guards in the country. They moved him all over the place. Tyler Vrabel, Mike Vrabel's son, is one of the tackles, and he got banged up, and they moved Zion Johnson over there because Zion can do literally anything you need him to. He's an athletic freak. He can do a million different things. He's awesome. He's a lot of fun to watch. And when they do pulls and things like that, he's one of the most athletic guards I've ever seen. So he's good. But then I don't want to rip on guys, but Ben Petrula and Tyler Vrabel. I'm not sold on Vrabel. He's their left tackle. He's been banged up really badly this year. He had times where he missed, and that was a disaster because the guy they had behind him did not need to see the field, and it cost them a game. But Petrula, who's been on the team, I think roughly 25 years, still makes lots of dumb pre-snap mistakes. And it costs BC every single game. And he's doing it still. So, you got 3 guys that are elite. And Christian Mahogany's really good. He's a new name. He'll be a name that that the ACC fans will be talking about like they do with Zion Johnson this year. Really good. Like he's come a long way. So they're a strength. And I think with Jurkovec, they'll be really good. When it was the Dennis Grosel era, everything was falling apart, and the offensive line was definitely part of that too.
And then before we go over to defense, I want to end up on this one note. Schematically, what does Florida State's offense have to do to sort of stifle your offense? I mean, Dennis Grosel has been out the most of the year, so there's not too much tape on Jurkovec except for last year. So what exactly should be FSU's defensive game plan to sort of stifle it and slow down your offense?
They've got to take away some of the offensive weapons, and I think it starts with the passing game. If you make BC into a running attack and a one-dimensional team, you can beat them. That's a big thing to say though, because Jurkovec can run it, Pat Garwo can run it. But I think if you take away some of those targets, if you take away Zay, you take away Trey Barry, and force Jurkovec to make go down his reads, I think he can do it. But I haven't seen enough to say that he can definitely be a consistent quarterback against a good passing defense.
Okay, that's good to know. And then now, before we head on to the defense side of the ball, folks, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about our friends over at BuyOnline.ag. Hey, are you a gambling man?
I am. Well, I am on Bet Online. I do a lot of. I've been fading hard on the. I've been doing a lot of over-unders on BC basketball. Let's put it that way.
I have a line for you actually, and I want to make sure to see for official BetOnline.ag line of the day. Syracuse plays NC State. Do you know what the spread's at right now?
I don't. What is it?
It's Syracuse plus 11.5. So I kind of want what's your thoughts on this line right now? Would you take Syracuse or the plus points, or would you go with NC State, or would you look more at the total?
Ooh, man. I I'm gonna go with Syracuse. I'm gonna go with Syracuse in that one. I think it's gonna be closer than 11.5. They played so poorly against Louisville last week, but I don't know. I have a hard time betting against Sean Tucker against any team. I think he's enough to keep it closer. I think NC State will win, but give me NC State by like 7.
I'm kind of right there with you. I think this line should be more like 8.5, maybe 7.5. If we're being completely honest here. So yeah, Syracuse plus 11.5, folks, is the official BetOnline.ag line of the day. And if you want to fight AJ for his bad pick, his Twitter is at AJ_BC. If you see on YouTube below. And once you're done with that, head on over to BuiltBar.com, folks. Built Bar has 19 delicious flavors. I'm a big cherry Barcia guy. As you've heard, Max is the peanut butter brownie. AJ, I think you're the coconut guy, right?
I get yelled at. I get coconut, but I'm in the cookie dough, which is limited to flavor, but I can't talk about that because I get yelled at. So I'm gonna go with the coconut.
Yeah, coconut. And then, as you know, Dave loves salted caramel. So, folks, head on over to built.com. Use promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15 to get 50% off your order. LOCKED15, LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. And now we're going to wrap up today's show with AJ Black _ BC from Locked On Boston College. And AJ, let's talk defense. And before we actually go deep into the defense, I kind of want to ask, there's a player that we transferred over to BC. I kind of want to ask, for my own personal, curiosity, how's Jayden Woodby been this season?
He's been really good. He's really fit in. It was funny. He talked to me, when he entered the transfer portal, he sent me a message like, "Hey, what do you think about BC?" And I was like, "I can't talk to you about that." Well, here's the guy you can talk to. But he ended up, really fitting in, I think, really well with the scheme that Boston College is going for. BC really wants to emphasize going with 5 defensive backs as much as possible. And they like to have a safety that can actually kind of, play the safety linebacker role. And he does it perfectly. He had the play of the game for BC, other than what Jurkovec was doing. Defensively, he had the play of the game last week for against Georgia Tech. He had Georgia Tech was down, I think, 6. They were marching down. They had the ball at the goal line, and then Yates went back and threw a pass, and he undercut it and intercepted it to win the game. So he's had some big moments. I've loved him. He's a guy they throw in front of the media all the time during our press conferences. So he's a guy we've got to know. And he's fit in well with the culture Boston College put together.
That's good to hear, because actually what probably was one of my favorite players actually at Florida State. And he tragically had that knee injury, I want to say 2.5 years ago. And then we saw kind of his, I want to say, aversion to contact, but you could definitely see the burst wasn't there to like initiate contact, initiate tackling. So it actually is really good to hear that he's doing a lot better at Boston College. I mean, I've seen his PFF grades. He's top 10 in y'all's team for a reason. With a tackling grade at 90.1, that's elite in the country. So then let's flip over to the entirety of the identity of the defense, because Jeff Hafley was the defensive coordinator by trade from Ohio State. And I kind of want to know, what exactly does your defense rely on to sort of stop other offenses in their tracks?
It's confusion. That's what he goes for. So BC's front line is not over. They haven't had a good defensive lineman since Zach Allen a couple years ago. And then Harold Landry, if you follow the Titans, he was their sack leader like 5 years ago. They haven't been able to replace that. They've got guys like Marcus Valdez, Brandon Barlow, who have been good, but they're near the bottom in sacks. And what Hafley has done, which I really think is kind of talks to how smart he is as a defensive mind, is he's not relying on those guys to get home to the quarterback. Because if he did, this defense would get torched. What he's doing is confusing the quarterback with everything behind the defensive line. He's mixing up coverages. He's going man. He's throwing guys all over the place. He's, dropping back guys. And what it's doing is it's forcing quarterbacks to make uncomfortable throws. And it's made BC's passing defense the number 3 passing defense in the country. He's got good secondary help. And injury watch will be something that Florida State fans are going to want to watch for, because Brandon Sebastian, their top defensive back, has been out the last 2 weeks. He's been back at practice. They're not sure if he's going to play yet or not. I think he will, but Hafley's so hard to read with that. But the bigger issue, Josh DeBerry, who's their nickel back and does a million things on their defense. They move him all over the place. He's been blitzing all over the place. He had some sort of injury. It looked like his arm or shoulder against Georgia Tech. and he, it looked bad. Hafley says he's hopeful that he'll play. I had to say, covering since Hafley has been there and going to these press conferences, I cannot tell you who's going to play and who's not, because he's worse than Bill Belichick with that. Cause I cannot figure out what he means by some of this stuff. It's not like this guy's probable, this guy's questionable, this guy's doubtful. It's like, we're hopeful. Well, what does that mean?
That doesn't mean. That's even worse than questionable. That's even worse than doubtful.
Right. Because you don't know what, and the guys that you go in, you're like, oh, you know what he said there? I'm guessing that guy's not going to play. You're wrong every time. Like he's there starting, Trey Berry. I was like, yeah, he's not playing next week. And there he is. He's in the starting lineup. So those two guys, Sebastian and DeBerry, are big ones to watch for. DeBerry especially, because I think he's the heart and soul of that defense. If he misses that, they're putting a true freshman out there who, CJ Burton Jr., who is a BC's biggest recruit in years, but he's not Josh DeBerry. So that's something I think that Florida State fans will probably want to watch for.
Well, that should hopefully be helpful for us, because our wide receivers have probably been the most, what's the word looking for, disappointing group actually for the entirety of the season. But now I kind of want to ask, because you guys actually have faced similar quarterbacks like Jordan Travis. You kind of faced a higher ceiling version of Jordan Travis and Malik Cunningham against Louisville, and you kind of faced a slower and not as dynamic with his arm and Garrett Schrader. How do you think those two games prepared Boston College's defense for Jordan Travis? And do you think that will help them at all, if anything?
I think what they're going to want to watch for is the explosives, because that was what killed BC against Syracuse. That was what killed them against Louisville. Like Jordan Yates, the quarterback for Georgia Tech, was mobile, but they kept him manageable. They didn't let him run for 800 yards or whatever. Like Malik Cunningham, it felt like every time he turned the corner, he was gone for like 30, So I think for BC, what they got to do is try to keep Florida State being one-dimensional, try to keep the explosives as minimal as possible. I know that's a big thing Hafley always looks at, and really try to keep everything in front of them, because what Hafley has done with his defense is his goal is to force the offense to march down the field and to not make mistakes. And unless you have a quarterback that can consistently do that, you're going to fall and you're going to make a mistake here or there, and that'll push them back, because when it's third and long or whatever, that defense is not going to give it up, because they're too sound there. But when against against Travis, I think they're going to have to, make sure that he doesn't do those big plays that can kill them. And I think that is stuff that they've learned. And, I think fresher legs with Jurkovec back there at quarterback, not having to be out there the whole game, will help BC their defense stay a little bit better than they had against some of those other teams.
So then, for those explosive plays that happened against Louisville and that happened against Syracuse, was that primarily due to the mobility of the quarterback? As I know Malik Cunningham, he's got legs for days, and now he kind of has an arm. Schrader doesn't really have the arm, but he has those legs. So what exactly was it basically allowing the pocket to move and then just the quarterback just running free? Because that's been Jordan Travis' bread and butter for a while now. And 2 years ago, actually at Chestnut Hill, was kind of Jordan Travis' coming out party, where he did run for over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm. I think it has to do more that the defense, when it happened, it happened later in the game. Like when Schrader did it, it was all the third quarter. When Malik Cunningham did it, it was all the third quarter. So I think Travis will have those moments, but I think it's limiting them. And I think with, again, BC, I tweeted this the other day, I have a real hard time when different sites are like, oh, BC, they're averaging this amount of points. How can they, we're going to be better than them. It's like, yeah, but your BC from October is apples to BC now, which is oranges. It's so hard to compare it, because the Grossell era was so detrimental to everything that BC was doing. The defense, everything was just not clicking, because the offense was just so dysfunctional and it just wasn't working, so it just impacted the defense. It impacted the coaching, and everything just kind of hurt because of that. What I saw last week is more of what I expect from BC. And to be fair, the defense wasn't great to begin the game, but they locked down at different points, and I think that's what ended up helping them win it because they made plays when they needed to.
So then before we, go into prediction time then, so like what should the FSU offense actually use to capitalize on said defense? Is it simply the explosive plays, or is there something like certain weakness that you have actually along your defense that we can exploit?
I mean, I have noticed, and I don't know if BC eventually kind of closes it down. I'd have to watch more film to see it, but it seems to me whenever you have a speedier back or a speedier quarterback that can get to the outside, it seems that BC struggles. Like they, when they bounce it to the outside and get to that corner, they can get big plays. It's that when the offense is like, oh yeah, then let's get cute and start throwing the ball again, or let's stick it to the inside where BC can kind of close down, that they don't. But I feel like the more outside plays that Florida State can do, bouncing, the quarterback or bouncing a running back out there, you'll get some plays, you'll get some yards.
So then now I want to give your prediction, AJ. How do you see this game playing out all the way up to the final score?
All right, so I think BC's in a good spot. The part that worries me is their defense. If and it's an injury thing. So Isaiah Graham Mobley, I also didn't mention this, their new linebacker from Temple, who's he was leading the team in tackles for a while. He's out. He doesn't sound like it sounds like he's going to come back. It's hard to tell again with Hafley. I can't figure that out. But there's so many guys that they're juggling who could be injured, who could not be injured. I think it's going to be a close game. That being said, Jurkovec is playing with some panache that I have not seen out of him. And Boston College fans don't want to hear it, but there's, they played well last week. He showed some moxie coming back early. I get this feeling, and this is where I'm going with this. He plays well against Florida State. They shock Wake Forest somehow. And then he wins the bowl game. And then he marches off to the NFL, which is going to suck. Because,
oh God, that hurts.
Yeah, because you don't want to. You want a full year out of him, and we have not gotten that yet. And I don't know. I get that. He's older. He already redshirted at Notre Dame, and I get this feeling he's going to have a big game and it's going to continue building, and then we're going to have a nice 8-4 season, and then it's just going to be like bringing in one of the freshmen or something next year. So I got BC winning probably like 38-24 or something like that.
Ooh, you think we're gonna let you guys score 38 points with a man who's got a broken wrist in that damn cold? Okay.
In that damn cold. I mean, he's a northern guy. He's from Pennsylvania. This is his life.
Hey, está bien. I understand you, bro. But I mean, my thing is, it's more that I think I'm worried about how this team's going to respond after the emotional win over arch rival Miami.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that whether it will be effective, but also Jordan Travis is like an entire career started off a run that Kendall Briles and Odell Higgins, when Odell was the interim coach after Willie got fired, to, hey, do what you do best. And that's basically how we were all introduced to him 2 years ago. And it's kind of funny how now we're starting to fully believe in Jordan Travis, that now I think it's the perfect, closing the circle, like coming full circle kind of moment. I think the defenses of both teams are going to actually show out a little more in this game. I personally have it. I think Florida State 24, BC 17, maybe 20. I think it's going to be that close of a game.
Oh man, 17 points for BC.
Yeah, listen. The defense. Trust me. I am the conductor of the Adam Fuller hate train, and that man has made me shut up. Adam Fuller's our defensive coordinator, by the way.
Yeah,
I have been the conductor of that hate train since he got hired 2 years ago. But and I think he's finally showed something these past few weeks, and we held Miami to 28 points, and 2 of those points, I don't know if you watched the game, was on a fluky touchdown, and then the other one was in prime field position inside the 30. So to me, they only scored 14 points. And Miami's offense, not to be, that kind of guy, it's probably one of the most elite offenses in the country with Tyler Van Dyke under center. But
come on. I got to disagree with you, Drake. Tyler Van Dyke is good, but he's a true freshman. Jurkovec's been around the block, and I don't know, man. I mean, I've been all in the Miami hype train, but you're going to see an offense, I think, that's a bit better than Miami this week. I'm telling you right now.
All right. I'll keep this in. We'll have a friendly wager, when we get off camera. We'll see how we win the team. But AJ, thank you so much for coming by, man. It's always a great time to talk to you. Please let the people know where they can follow your work.
All right, yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Locked On BC. I'm the host of Locked On Boston College. You can check me out there. You can also find me on Twitter as well at AJ_BC. You can yell at me and tell me that my prediction is way off. I don't mind. I can handle that. Also, I'm the editor and publisher of BCBulletin.com. Check out my work there. I do a final thoughts and predictions on Friday where I'll give you my full prediction. I'll do my matchup between Florida State's defense and BC's offense, and BC's offense and Florida State's defense, all that good stuff. You can check that out. Also, my beer of the week is up there. Check all that out at bcbulletin.com.
You say beer of the week?
Beer of the week. I give a beer of the week. Drizzy, if you got a good one for Florida, I'd love to have a guest picker on there. So
I would definitely come on there for that. Trust me. But folks, please check on Locked On BC. We always recommend hearing out these other podcasts before we play the opponent. AJ is one of the best out there. Sorry. AJ is one of the best out there. I'm going to figure out which way I got to point to when I'm doing some video. But for myself, Drake, that was AJ. We'll see y'all next time on Locked On Seminoles. Go Noles, baby.